What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to the Canadian Football Fanatics YouTube channel. Thank you guys for tuning in today. And you guys are tuning in to another Canada West football show with myself and soon to be Matt Young from CTV Saskatoon. And of course, Canada West TV analyst was on the call for the first time all season last week for the Saskatchewan Alberta game, which we will talk about here shortly when Matt joins me. Which Matt will be joining me here in a moment. Unfortunately, not for the entire show. That is, of course, my fault. Running a little bit late from the Raiders practice here tonight, which is, excuse me, where I'm coming from. Um, Cutting into, unfortunately, Matt and I's time here tonight. So Matt will be joining us for maybe about 15 or so minutes. Probably just discuss last week's action, including the game he called, and then we will get him out of here. And then you and I, you being the listeners slash viewers, will go through, I guess, this upcoming week's picks slash matchups in the Canada West Football Conference. So before we get going, as always, if you guys are tuning in and enjoying, like, comment what you guys are enjoying, and subscribe, which is most importantly. When you guys subscribe, please press the notification bell. You guys will get notified every single time we go live, like last night being Wednesday night, for the Canadian Football Fanatics, football weekly show, which was last night, that being every Wednesday night at 6 o'clock sharp. I was only able to join the fellas for a half an hour, had to sneak out of there to get to practice. So, as I mentioned, like, comment, subscribe. If you guys are on social media, if you guys are on Instagram, please follow us over there. We are closing in on 1,100 followers, excuse me. And that is at Canadian Football Fanatics, excuse me. And on Twitter, we are at _CF Fanatics as well. You can find us on YouTube at Canadian Football Fanatics YouTube channel. And of course, now I gotta pay the bills, I guess, folks. We are sponsored slash partnered with Area 51 and their football, the Rouge Composite Football. Composite leather, I believe is what they're calling it. So big shout out to them. I know they have a more bigger presence in Ontario, a little bit of the OUA. I think some schools are familiar with their products and their catalogs, which if you are in the football industry, community, whatever you want to call it, go check them out at Area 51 Sports. They have all your equipment needs, whether that, knee pads, hip pads, girdles, shoulder pads, helmets, towels, armbands, cleats, you name it, they got it. They even got apparel stuff for coaches, 7-on-7 for men's flag football, all that sort of stuff. So you name it, they got it in terms of football equipment. Go head over to Area 51 Sports to get all your football equipment needs. So before we get into it, I hope Matt's going to be joining us here. I know we were a little bit late momentarily. Hopefully, he still has a little bit of time for us. No worries if not. I guess we can still get into the game before Matt joins us. So, the game Matt was lucky enough to call last week in Canada West action was a thriller of a game, which saw the Saskatchewan Huskies picking up their second victory of the season, getting a 33-30 victory over the University of Alberta in Saskatchewan. So now Saskatchewan is 2-3 after that. Alberta 2-3 as well. And the chaos that is in the Canada West continues. Canada West chaos continues. Holy, 3 C's. Maybe we're going to have to trademark that or tag it or something, because we are almost, the chaos almost continued if Calgary was able to pull out a victory over UBC, which they came close, but no cigar, losing by 12. But we will get to that shortly. If Calgary was able to pick up a win, they would have been the fifth team to have 2 wins on the season out of 6 in the conference. UBC said no, no, no. They got their third win and are the lone team with 3 victories. So let's get into the game that is at hand that we are talking about first, which is the Saskatchewan Huskies at home getting a well-needed victory over a good University of Alberta team. I think it just adds even more to the parity, the competition and how competitive the Canada West Conference is. Maybe we'll save this debate for another day. Small teaser, but the U Sports top 10 football rankings came out, I believe, this morning. It might have been last night by the time you are listening to this. Recording Wednesday night, uploading Thursday morning. I believe it was this morning, that being Wednesday morning. U Sports rankings came out. There was only two Canada West football teams represented, that being Manitoba and UBC. For my money, I think Alberta for sure should be in there, and I could argue, you know, I don't know who I want to kind of argue for, whether that be Regina or, Saskatchewan, the two Saskatchewan teams, but I still think they could be in there as well. But this is perfect timing that our co-host Matt Young is joining us. Matt, thanks for joining us. How you doing?
Oh, not too bad. Busy as always, getting ready for another busy weekend, but I'm doing okay. We got some exciting stuff going on in college football.
We do, and you were treated to a good one for your first game of the year last week, which we are going to talk about here in a second. I just wanted to say sorry for being a little bit late, and I appreciate so much of your time, as I know our listeners and viewers do as well, Matt. So let's get into that game. You were lucky enough to be there, call it, get a nice view from up top, I would imagine. 33-30, Saskatchewan wins over University of Alberta. Tell us about it, Matt.
Yeah, I mean, this was a really nice seesaw battle between two teams that were pretty evenly matched. I mean, I think a lot of people probably came in thinking Alberta sort of on overall on aggregate would have a pretty good shot at trying to get back to the Hardy Cup this year, but Saskatchewan has held their own, and so have a number of other teams. So you had teams that were pretty evenly matched, and Saskatchewan came out. They actually had a lead, and then Alberta got it back. They went up 30-14, and then it was the late third quarter and early fourth quarter where the Huskies started to mount a comeback, and it came down to a field goal. Lucas Scott late in the game put the Huskies up 33-30, and then John Justini on the final play of the game for the Alberta Golden Bears lines up for a field goal. Now, he had actually briefly left the game earlier because it looked like he was injured. He came back out to try and kick that field goal, didn't have quite enough leg on it, and of course that didn't go through. It didn't tie it up, so the Huskies came out the victors at that one. So one other thing to note, quarterback Eli Hetlinger, and I don't know, I haven't seen depth charts for this week yet, but he left the second last play of the game in some sort of pain. I don't know how serious it was. It may not be serious at all, but hopefully he's okay. So, but for the Saskatchewan Huskies, I mean, that was a big win for them to kind of climb right back into it. And now they sit, at the moment in third place at 2-3, only one game back of UBC for that second place spot, which would get you at least one home playoff game. So that was a big win for the Saskatchewan Huskies. And I think for the Alberta Golden Bears, I don't think too many people predicted that they would be 2-3 at this time of year. I think a lot of people felt that they were a top two team, but it hasn't quite worked out. But it was a great game in front of a pretty good crowd. It was great weather, and it was a pleasure to call it. And that's one thing I love. It came down to the last play, like so many games do in Canada West.
Yes, and as you were saying there, I think it was 30-14 or whatever it was, the 19 or whatever unanswered points that Saskatchewan came with there in the late third quarter, early into the fourth quarter there was very impressive for them. Kind of, they could have very easily folded in their tents and called things there late in the early in the third quarter. But seeing as that it is Canadian football, still a lot of time to go, and obviously they were able to prove that fact right, get the victory. As you mentioned, unfortunately for Justini, he just pushed the kick wide right. I know I reached out to you following that game of, what we would have been treated for in store there if it went into overtime if he made that kick. And unfortunately, he wasn't able to. But I know he's been a very key weapon for them all year long. And as you said, banged up with a little bit of an injury, had to show his toughness to come battle in and try to attempt to get his team into an overtime situation. So was another good game from Riker Frank, who continues to be one of the best running back in the Canada West, just under 200 yards. What have you got to say about you? It's kind of they've kind of rotated here on a weekly basis between Daniel Weeb kind of shouldering the load and then Riker Frank on any given week for the Huskies offense there. What do you got to say about Frank's performance though?
It's impressive. He's so agile. I mean, he can really zigzag down the field. And just when you think you got him like almost falling down, he can find a way to stay on his feet. And that's what's so impressive about Riker Frank. And so many times he was able to find a hole and dodge some tacklers. I during the game, I said that he was caught in a phone booth surrounded by green and gold jerseys, and he somehow managed to get out of that. So Riker Frank, explosive for the Saskatchewan Huskies, and they're going to need that. They're going to need him to keep offenses off the field. If you have a good run game, whether it's a running back or your quarterback that can extend plays, it's so important, because what running does, if you can do it from the start of the game, is it chews up clock, and two, you're on the field for longer, making their defense tired. So Riker Frank, key for the Huskies. He had a great game, but they're going to have to do it all again, and the competition could be quite stiff this week.
It is. And then from the Alberta perspective, you mentioned about Eli Hetlinger kind of hobbling off the field there late in the fourth quarter. Seemed like he was dealing with some sort of significant injury. And then I know Matthew Peterson's, it seems to me, although his numbers maybe don't show it, it seems that he's been banged up. I know he missed the Calgary game, I believe, in week 2 when the University of Calgary won over Alberta, came back into the lineup, like I said, the stats don't show it, had a very good performance. But, how's this Alberta team looking? They just had another loss. And maybe potentially could be banged up at arguably the 2 biggest positions, and maybe even say 3 with Jonathan Justini, kicker / safety on the other side of the ball, and the injuries that are mounting up for that squad.
Well, first of all, we don't know how serious any of the injuries might be. I want to be clear on that. I have no reason to believe that Eli Hetlinger and Matthew Peterson and Jonathan Justini at this point won't be in the lineup this weekend. So one thing the Saskatchewan Huskies did, they did a good job of for the most part, shutting down that running attack. And it was Eric Tarim, one of the receivers, who had a standout game for the Alberta Golden Bears. They targeted number 85 a lot, and he rose to the occasion, got a couple of touchdowns. So Alberta has shown at receiver they have some depth, and they have some depth at running back. But the Saskatchewan Huskies, I think you got to credit Scott Flory. He came in with a game plan and it worked, and he did a good job. I still think this Alberta team is a better team than their record shows, and it would not surprise me if they climb back into it. And that's a squad that's tough, and especially that offensive line, it's tough. And if Eli Hetlinger is healthy and Matthew Peterson is healthy, definitely look out. So I don't think that this is an Alberta team that can't play well or doesn't play well, or is too banged up. I just think that on the weekend, the Saskatchewan Huskies defense did a pretty good job, and they had a rally offensively and came back 19 unanswered points. Anton Amadou, and by the way, using the backup quarterback in a number of plays, Jake Farrell got in there. I don't know if you were watching, but
good touchdown.
Yeah. So the Huskies tried some things and it worked. Credit Scott Flory and company. Chris Morris, I know he'll be back. That's a good team there, but Green and White came out with the win. I'm not counting Alberta out yet though.
Yeah, for sure. And well said there, because nobody's ruling out those guys at all. But I think the thing for them that would be like kind of my concern, why I pose the question there, is just I think they're banged up more so than the old argument of, are you hurt or are you injured? Guys that are going through this and they're kind of having to gut out to play a full 60 minutes. I think kind of doesn't allow them to play to their full capabilities. Which, as you said, I think Alberta is one of the better teams in the conference. But I think I forget their backup running back. He didn't really get to contribute much either. I think he only had 6 carries or something like that. So it's kind of unfamiliar to see Matthew Pearson under 20 carries without number 22 getting 10 or so plus carries to kind of balance that out and give those carries somewhere else. So I think they're kind of gutting through some stuff and still performing very well, just not able to ultimately get some victories. So interested to see how Alberta does with UBC this week. But let's get to the second matchup, Max. I know you got to get out of here with UBC beating the University of Calgary. What were your thoughts on that matchup? And just give them, I guess.
I mean, this was the Isaiah Knight show, right? I mean, at a 200.
The running back show, actually. Matthew Clark had the running back show. Matthew Clark had himself a pretty good evening as well.
Yeah. I mean, this was a battle on the ground, and 187 yards from Clark and 235 yards from Isaiah Knight, who, by the way, I think is actually first in the country in yards per game. So I mean, another huge day for both teams on the ground, but UBC coming out with the victory. And I said at the beginning of the season, I didn't think UBC was going to be winless for very long. And now they've come back and they sit themselves in second place at 3-2. This is a good UBC squad. I think 6 or 7 receivers had a catch in that game. And that's not to take away from the competition either. I mean, you look at Calgary, you had Dom Britton, 15 for 22, 225 yards, a couple of interceptions though, and that certainly hurt them. And again, Calgary, 5 different receivers with a catch in that one. But you're looking at a very good UBC squad that I think was just out to a slow start, and now I mean, it might be tough for them to catch Manitoba. Manitoba at 5-0 and undefeated. That last game of the season is UBC versus Manitoba. That's going to be a really interesting game because one, who's going to have an opportunity there, perhaps maybe to lock up top spot. And again, if both teams have nothing to play for, I'm interested to see how that game goes. Last game of the year. So, but at the moment, big win for UBC and they're back. They've now won 3 in a row, and them in Manitoba looking pretty hot right now.
Yes, and I agree with that for sure. And I agree with not sure if they're going to be able to catch Manitoba as well. But I think the best part if you're a UBC supporter or fan is that they're back to playing complementary football on both sides of the ball. Defense had a nice. I think they had maybe 2 interceptions and a few sacks in there as well, so able to affect the offense on the other side of the ball, turn the ball over as well. I know one of them was maybe more of a luckier type tipped interception that I think it was Jarrell Cummings came down with. But getting the ball back to their offense, giving them opportunities to score, and then leaning on that run game and Isaiah Knight and being able to build everything off that. I know you mentioned about the weapons or how many guys caught passes. Dane Kapler, Sam Davenports, all chipping in and doing their parts when they can thrive. I think that offense thrives when they're working off play action and Isaiah Knight's going. I think Garrett Rooker's probably at his most comfortable as well in that play action game when he's able to not shoulder the load. And I think not a surprise to anybody who watches UBC football, but I think Isaiah Knight is the straw that stirs that drink in that offense for sure. And they go as he goes. Calgary, unfortunately for them, once again, they come out on the wrong side of things. It was looking like, we all picked UBC, but I was kind of somewhat rooting for Calgary in the fact that they would have added so much more chaos to the Canada West if all 5 of the 6 teams would have been at 2 wins apiece. If Calgary was able to get the win last week as well. But what are you going to say about Calgary, who continues to battle week by week, and they just come out on the short end of things?
Well, I mean, it's remarkable how competitive it is this year in Canada West, and we've had all kinds of different close games. And that's what's interesting is you can have a team like Calgary roll up against a team like UBC, and you don't really know what the score is, and that's probably why our picks have been so difficult this year. I think Calgary's there. I think they're getting close to being there. That defense, I think they would have liked to have grabbed a couple of sacks in that game. But look, I think Calgary's a good team, and nobody's out of it. Certainly from a standings perspective, actually, absolutely nobody's out of it yet. So you can't count out the Calgary Dinos. It'll be interesting to see what they do against the Regina Rams this week. I'll be in the booth for that game as well. So that'll be a fun one to watch, and we'll see what they can do. But I mean, you're looking at Calgary's 1-4, but they're only 1 game back of Saskatchewan at 2-3, and only 2 games back of UBC at 3-2. So I mean, you could conceivably see Calgary still get a home playoff game potentially. The math doesn't really support it that much, but it's not out of the realm possibility. So I for the Calgary Dinos, for everybody, still lots to play for this season.
Crazier things have happened, I would imagine, especially in the Canada West this season. I feel like expect the unexpected at this point because things have been just wild to start through 5 weeks. So lastly, on the Dinos, I think, we've talked about it numerous times on the show here, Matt, throughout the season, that defense is, one of the better ones in the conference, maybe even in the country, as far as a complete unit, being able to turn over the ball, affect the other team's, offense and stuff like that. On offense, it was a little bit of a slow start for Don Brenton, that offense, but they've started to get things going now. Throwing to his brother, a few other guys, Matthew Clark getting going as well. But I think what hampers them so much is the turnovers, and I think Don Brenton is now. I think he's first in the conference with 7 interceptions on the season, which is something that when you're in these close ball games, something as little as an interception, doesn't even have to be on the other opponent's side of the field. You're just taking the ball to your hands and not giving your team a chance to add more to the scoreboard. So I think if Calgary can figure out that from that standpoint and take care of the football a little bit better, and to be honest, Matt, I know you weren't on the show last week, but I think they were probably robbed of a victory as well, and probably caught the football there a few weeks ago. I think if they keep knocking on the door, they're going to be able to break it down here and be able to come on the right side of things here. So lastly, last week, Matt, was Manitoba finding a way to win once again. Regina got out to a 6-0 lead and kept it for a majority of the first half. Manitoba finally got on the board late with the Braden Stubbs touchdown to take a 7-6 lead in the locker room. What were your thoughts on that one? Manitoba again finding a way to get a win in not the prettiest of fashions.
Okay, so we just kind of talked about it. How what Noah Pelche had 2 interceptions.
Matt, I believe you just muted yourself by accident. I lost you there for a second, just Matt, and I saw the mute signal come up. But anyways, as Matt comes back here, what we were talking about is the Manitoba Regina game, and I believe where he was going was the interceptions that cost them the game, which is I think Noah Pelche had the 2 interceptions that they could have two extra opportunities that they could have scored, whether that be a field goal and or a touchdown, which in a 9-point game I know is tough because it's a 2-score game, but um, you get an extra touchdown there. Who knows about a single on a punt on that other possession that you threw an interception on, or who knows about a field goal where you could have got 10 points and won by a single. Um, I think that's where Matt was going. I'm gonna guess, but if I was to just tell you my thoughts, I guess, guys, is I posed the question to Matt of Manitoba finding a way to win dirty once again, and to be honest, I think that is more of a credit to them than necessarily maybe it seems like a backhanded compliment, which I'm hoping it doesn't come off as so. Um, I think it's more impressive that even in your um, B game, C game, you're finding ways to win, finding ways to stack victories. Be 5-0 now atop the conference where you're building a lead now, where you're going to be able to have the Canada West run through Manitoba, and you're going to have a UBC or maybe an Alberta team, whoever it may be, come out east, come to Manitoba and have to play in Princess Auto Stadium, which should be no easy task to do, which they played so good all year long. So. Like I said, not a backhanded compliment on my part. I think this is just a credit to them and adds to what they've been doing all year long is playing as a team. A team victory was what they got with that first half. Offense was a little bit slow. We saw Jackson time Chichinski there in the second half, but they were a little bit slower in the first half and weren't able to get on the board till late in the second quarter. 6-0. That defense was able to keep them out of the end zone and hold Regina to field goals. So that's what I mean about just the team victories. But as I bring Matt back in here, I believe where Matt was going is what we just talked about with Calgary and the interceptions, maybe about Noah Pelche and those interceptions costing Regina to a chance to maybe make that game a little bit closer or maybe even win.
Yeah, I mean, I think the story of the season, you brought it up, right? I mean, so you look at Don Britton, I mean, and Calgary, right? Most interceptions, and then who's at the top of the standings? Jackson Tuszynski, right? He only has 2 interceptions so far this season. So turnovers are huge, and Manitoba coming out with a big win. They're 5-0, and they're still the team to beat. And that Bison's defense is also very, very good. That is an excellent defense. They've only allowed, I think, 80 or 90 points all season long. I don't have the exact number right in front of me, but they have a very sharp defense that doesn't give up a lot. 87 points. There you go in 5 games. So they're averaging that's what 17, 16 points a game against. That's pretty good. And you're going to win a lot of football games unless you can score against the Manitoba Bison. So I think we got to give a huge shout out to that Bison defense, and we got to give a huge shout out to the offense that just doesn't turn it over. And that's why you got to make the most of your opportunities against Manitoba, because there's a high likelihood that Jackson Tuszynski is not going to put the ball where it shouldn't go. So credit them. I think that Regina team is still a good team, and you know what, you think about it, they've been in a bunch of close games so far this year, and a couple of them could have been wins. So I'm excited to be at Mosaic Stadium for that Rams and Calgary game. That's going to be a fun one. I'm excited to be at Griffith Stadium in the booth for the Huskies and taking on the Manitoba Bisons this week. So all in all, it was a fun week in Canada West, and now we move on to sort of the meat of the schedule here, I would say, where you have now it starts to
October.
look at seeding and stuff like that, and teams jockeying for position in the playoffs.
Yes, we're in October, man. It's things are going to start to get exciting. CFL purposes are going to start to ramp up as well, and then obviously with the Thanksgiving bye, I think there's only a few more weeks of games to be played here before we get into playoffs. And as you mentioned, standings and stuff starting to take place here of who's going to be basically as of now. It seems like things are going to run through Manitoba for the Canada West playoffs until proven otherwise, and we will see because the start of the year, if the end of the year is anything like the start of the year, we should be in store for a pretty interesting finish to the Canada West regular season, because who knows what's in store for the playoffs. The 4 seed might go on a run or something like that to make
You
things
never
even more
know.
perfect. But let's get quickly, Matt, your opinion before we let you go. I know you're busy and got to go. Just quickly, a little 2 minutes or less. What are your thoughts on this week's matchups, and we can get you out of here?
Well, I mean, first of all, you got UBC taking on Alberta, Manitoba taking on Saskatchewan, and Calgary taking on Regina. So let's start in Saskatoon. The Manitoba Bison's taking on the Saskatchewan Huskies, and I'm excited for this matchup. This is the first time that Jackson Tuszynski is actually going to start a game at Griffith Stadium against the Huskies. The last 2 times he started against the Huskies, those games were in Manitoba. So this is his first start against the Huskies at Griffith Stadium, and it'll be interesting to see how he does. And I'm excited to see what Scott Flory does. He was able to do a pretty good job of neutralizing Matthew Peterson from the Alberta Golden Bears. What can he draw up against Jackson Tuszynski and AK Kasama and the offensive attack from the Manitoba Bisons? Braden, of course, there. So that'll be interesting. On the other side, Brian Dobie, Anton Amadrid is one of the top 5 passers, I believe, in U Sports as far as yards per game goes. He's averaging 286 yards a game. That's 5th in the country. So I'm interested to see how that very good Manitoba defense, how they handle a team like Saskatchewan that can stretch them out down the field. So that's going to be a good game. And then you look elsewhere on the schedule, you have Alberta taking on UBC. This is a big one, I think, for Alberta, and it's a big one for UBC. But the Alberta Golden Bears, you don't want to slide to 2-4. And I'm interested to see if Matthew Peterson can get going again, and whether or not the Alberta Golden Bears can stop that Isaiah Knight running attack. And I remember it was Alberta that, I believe it was Alberta that defeated UBC earlier on in the season. I'm just going to check. I think these teams met back in, if I can just, I'll up here in just a moment.
UBC met up with Manitoba, or maybe earlier. I don't know if you have it.
It was in week 1, and Alberta won on Friday, August the 30th, 42-28 over UBC. So it was Alberta that won in week 1 against this UBC squad. So this is sort of the second meeting between these two teams. And look, I think the pressure is going to be on Alberta to try and even up that record at 3-3, because if they fall to 2-4, depending on what Saskatchewan or Regina does, it would make it very difficult for them to get a home playoff game, perhaps, and they might be finding themselves battling in their playoff lives. And then on the other side of it, you got Calgary taking on Regina at Mosaic Stadium, and this is going to be a good one too. Noah Pelche taking on Don Britton, and again, the Calgary Dinos coming in. They're going to be hungry. I mean, they're 1-4, and I don't think they can fall or afford to really fall back to 1-5 against a pretty good Regina team, because 1-5 makes it very, very difficult to climb back into 4th spot. So that's going to be a good game, and Mark McConkey's going to want his guys to make sure that they make big plays when they can make them and avoid turnovers. Because oftentimes when you look at a football score, Cole, as we've said, 9 times out of 10, the team that turns it over less is probably going to win. So I'm looking forward to see how efficient those two offenses are with the football, and see what Calgary's defense can do, because they got some big players that, as we know, can cause all kinds of problems for quarterbacks and receivers. So that's also going to be a fun one to watch. And this game, you're really going to start to now see some separation. It's been a tight logjam for the first 5-6 weeks of the season. Now you're going to start to see teams sort of try to assert themselves. Manitoba, if they win, they move to 6-0. They pretty much lock up a home playoff game and almost lock up first place. Although that last week of the season, UBC, if they play them, they might have a chance to steal number 1. We'll see how that goes. But this week's going to be really exciting.
It's going to be catch them if you can. That's for sure.
That's
If you're
right.
Manitoba, and I don't know if anybody can, if we're being very honest. But that's why they
Right
play the
now,
games.
they know where the Buffalo roam, and the Buffalo
Yeah,
roam atop Canada West.
yes, they sure do. The herd, as they call them, I believe in
There
Manitoba or
you go.
Winnipeg. But Matt, as I mentioned before, so apologetic for being a little bit late. Was at Raiders practice, just getting a few interviews and stuff for
There
the
you go.
channel. So football never stops over here out
Nope.
west, and I
Nope.
had the weekly show early on from about 6 to about 7, and then had to quickly run over to the field and grab a quick interview or two before recording this with you. So I'm so appreciative of your time, as I
Yeah.
hope our viewers are as well. Any final thoughts before we get you out of here, though, Matt?
You know what? I'm excited. I mean, I love calling Canada West football. I love calling Hilltops football. I mean, when I was young and I played football, and this goes back to the 90s, we never had games that were streaming. I mean, unless you hoped, TSN might do a game a year, but you never had games that were streaming. You had to listen to it on the or hope you could see some highlights at 11:30. I'm sometimes so jealous of a lot of these guys who play football, whether it be out west where you are with the Raiders, or here with the Hilltops, or Regina Thunder, or Canada West with the Huskies or UPC, because they get to watch their games, and that's for me to get out there and make their games so exciting. Because when I grew up, I always wished that one day my games would be on TV, and they never were, because it was just a different time back then. You didn't have internet, you didn't have you didn't have internet streaming anyways. There was no such thing as on demand 24-hour streaming, whatever you wanted. YouTube wasn't around. So I'm really excited, and I love doing it, and I have such a good time, and I'm excited for this weekend. It's going to be busy, but it's going to be really, really fun, and I encourage guys to watch, because we're putting on US style college football presentation in these games. It's not a 1 or 2 camera shoot. We're really working hard. We got a lot of great guys from a great with a lot of great football experience, and I encourage people to watch, because the presentation is also very, very good. So this weekend will be fun, and we'll chatter up again next week.
Absolutely. I can definitely add that the production, the presentation is fantastic from a Canada West. Me watching every week and stuff like that, you guys do a fantastic job. And it was super cool to actually hear a familiar voice on the call there last week on Friday night. So make sure to tune into all your games, Matt, and have a great call. And we will talk to you next Wednesday night.
All right. Take care. Thanks.
Later, Matt. That was Matt Young from CTV Saskatoon and Canada West football analyst. Appreciate Matt for joining us as always every week here, breaking down some Canada West action. So, not much more to be said, folks. I will quickly go through the matchups Matt just went through as well. Just give you quickly my thoughts before we get out of here. Quickly, I should have mentioned here before Matt got off. The season standings stand as of this date, week number 6. We're heading into week 6. Matt sits first place in our CFF panel of Canada West predictors, I guess if you want to call it. Matt is 8-7. It was a tough start for all of us, but Matt is the first one to crack or to get over 500, on the season. 8-7, Matt. In second is a two-way tie between Connor O'Neill of Canadian Football Perspective, CFP, at 7-8, and myself, Cole of CFF, Canadian Football Fanatics, at 7-8. And actually, a shout out to Connor O'Neill and Wade Zenketa, if I'm pronouncing it correctly. Hopefully I am, Wade. Fan of yours, fan of the show as well. Connor and Wade included a question that I asked Connor via DM this past weekend. Was watching some of the Canada West action and was very intrigued from a out of conference perspective. Whereas I'm watching more Canada West on a weekly basis. I know those guys are more diehard U Sports than I am, so I wouldn't be surprised if they're trying to watch a little bit of Canada West as well. So they're having they just have a better opinion and a wider sample size than I do. So I reached out to Connor and asked him, who he thought was the best running back in the country as of now, because we are so blessed in the Canada West with guys like Isaiah Knight, Matthew Peterson, Riker Frank, Matthew Clark, Marshall Erickson, who else am I? Braden Stubbs. That we are very lucky at the running back and quarterback position of how good they are, how skilled they are, and they included that question in their show today, their U Sports, I believe, kind of like similar to this show here tonight, where they do a OUA recap and then they break down some of the more talked about or more entertaining games in U Sports that week. And they did that today being Wednesday. I guess tomorrow by the time you guys are here recording this. But shout out to those guys. Appreciate them for throwing that in there. And then lastly, Gord Randall has kind of slightly made a comeback here. 6-9 on the season in third place, 2 games back of first, 1 game back of second. We will see how things go here this week. And I guess I can actually give you guys our picks for this week, which I might as well do here live as I pull them up. Sorry, guys. The internet, it's not me. I wonder if I can do it this way, actually. Boom, boom. Hopefully you guys can see my face still. But let me just take a picture. That'll probably be easier. Bada boom, bada boom. Hopefully you guys can see me and didn't lose me. This week's picks stand as follows. In the UBC Alberta game, we have a clean sweep by all 4 of us going with UBC. Now, me personally, why I'm going with UBC, because I think this is going to be a good game. As Matt mentioned before he left, Alberta actually has the first meeting of these two. They won the first meeting of these two played early in the season to start the year. UBC's first game as Hardy Cup defending champions and was let down. I think UBC is going to be very motivated to win this one. They are playing, they are trending upwards as I think Alberta is flattening out. I don't think they're going down by any means. I think they're kind of leveling out a little bit, going through a little bit of a lull in the middle part of their season. And I personally got UBC because of that fact. I also don't know what the status is of Eli Hetlinger, Matthew Peterson, and Jonathan Justini. As I mentioned earlier, I think those guys are going to be able to go, but I think they're battling through stuff that they're banged up a little bit and having to gut it out and not being able to give all 100% of them to their team, which is going to be a downfall to that program because those are 3 pretty big faces of the Alberta program. So interested to see how this one goes because as Matt mentioned, Alberta's not going to want to fall to 2-4, but at the same time, they do fall to 2-4. Manitoba wins. I mean, Saskatchewan's 2-4, and if Calgary wins, Regina's 2-4, and same with Calgary. We still have a chance to have 4 teams with 2 wins, and they will be in third place. Almost cemented. I wouldn't say cemented with UBC getting their 4th victory and only Alberta having 2 with a few weeks left to go, but it sure will start to close the door of Alberta, creeping in there and getting hold of a home playoff game in the Canada West playoffs. So should be an interesting one. I'm interested to see another battle of the running backs here with Isaiah Knight and Matthew Peterson. For my money, the 2 best running backs in the conference. That is no slight to Riker Frank, who I think is a phenomenal running back. I think it just shows how high the competition is at the running back position, skill level as well in the conference, and just phenomenal players. I could argue that those 3 players are maybe the best 3 players in the conference as a whole, and it's going to be a shame whoever's snubbed of all Canadian / All Stars. It's going to be a real shame, as I mentioned. So second matchup of the week is Manitoba 5-0 traveling to Saskatchewan. Not much to be said about this one. I think even if Saskatchewan's able to keep this close, Manitoba's just too good in these close type of games. They are too good when you try to make them be left-handed, which I think Saskatchewan will try to do. And then, as Matt mentioned as well, Manitoba's just not going to turn over the football. Their defense is going to be, very, very stiffening. And you look down to the bottom of the interception category, leaders, if that's what maybe you want to call them. Jackson Shadinsky sits at the bottom. Well, Anton Ammerud, I believe, is second with 6 interceptions in 5 games. He turns over the football. Had that problem last year, I think, with 18, if I'm not mistaken. If you turn over the football against this Manitoba team, you're asking for it, and I feel like you're just making it a uphill climb to get a victory. So I think this is going to be a close game once again, which Manitoba has found or has been comfortable in those scenarios all year long, playing close games, playing from behind. They find ways to turn it on when it matters and have things clicking. They also are just so hard to defend offensively. You look at a guy like Jackson Jasinski, who's really truly brought into that point guard mentality where he's not that point guard who is LeBron James excuse me, I shouldn't say LeBron James, but Magic Johnson, a Steve Nash, a guy that's pass first. And yeah, every once in a while he's going to look to get his, but um, a guy like Jackson Szczynski who's going to pass first, also look to get his with the highlight reel rushing touchdown that he had last week. He's been known for his rushing ability and what his escapability, what his legs can do for him, and gives him an added dynamic as a quarterback and being able to be a dual threat quarterback. I think that just adds to the ability of that offense where point guard, you mix in a rushing touchdown like he had last week. Also, you have guys like Braden Stubbs, A.K. Gasamu, who's obviously the well-named star in that offense, but you guys also have guys like Avon Lloyd, who I think is coming on to be a very underrated piece of that offense, who guys are going to slowly start to hear, be familiar with his name, a guy that's a Winnipeg guy, or kind of made the transition from running back to receiver now, slot receiver, has had a good transition, has had some success in the field, similar to a Nick Dembski. I don't know if he necessarily compared him Brian Dobie, but I know there was kind of some rumblings or mentionings of a little bit of a similarities, I guess, in their game. He's been just a very dynamic weapon for them all year long. A guy like is it Mulin Yitna, who caught a touchdown last week, very impressive guy for them as well. And guys like Dejan Lejour, who's been quiet this year, but I think when called upon can be a very good weapon as well. And they just continue to have guys that chip in when their number's called, all throughout that that offensive side, that unit, that side of the ball, excuse me. And that's just why I have confidence in Manitoba this week. I think Saskatchewan's going to be able to. They're starting to find their stride as well. They're starting to trend upwards. I just think Manitoba in a close game. I'm going with Manitoba 10 times out of 10 this year, and I think they're going to continue to ride that Brian Dobie high/farewell tour that they are just feeling themselves in there at a whole new level this year. Lastly, Calgary and Regina. Went back and forth with this one. This is a tough one for me to predict. Um, Ultimately, I'm going to go with the Calgary Dinos. Now, I would say I have my confidence in picking the Calgary Dinos comes from that defense and what that defense can do for the offense on a weekly basis, which is keep them in games. Their offense is starting to find their form, as I mentioned earlier. Don Britton has started to play better. That being said, he is still, I believe the CFP guys said that, for what he does, make plays, he kind of unfortunately takes back in some of those interceptions and some of those turnover worthy plays that he's gonna, I believe they said whatever he giveth, they're gonna taketh on defense. So unfortunately, I am a little bit concerned that Don Britton might giveth a little bit too much, and the defense might taketh. That sounds so funny that I'm saying that. That being said, I think Calgary's defense is going to be able to keep them in the game, and if they can get a turnover or two, Calgary's offense will do enough with the talented that they have with Matthew Clark, who's came on as of recent, Don Britton, who's been doing just slightly less than probably needed to get a victory. With the loss last week to UBC, he doesn't throw two of those interceptions. Who knows what happens in those games? And it's not all on the quarterback. So I hate to kind of put blame on one man's shoulders because it never is in the game of football. But that being said, I think if he can do better, Calgary can do much better in terms of the results on any given week. Now, Regina, I know Regina and I have had a up and down relationship. I started off the year, was very high on them, especially coming off, sitting down with Jackson Somback, sitting down with Josh Donnelly. A few times I didn't pick them, and they got very defensive. A lot of their players, a lot of their coaching staff, a lot of their social media. And I will take this time to jokingly dig at them. They have been quiet ever since, and it's because they've come back down to earth a little bit. Now, that being said, Regina is actually a good team, so I don't mean to joke too much or too harshly. Hopefully, they can take a joke. Regina is a good team. They are very well balanced, and they are just that. They are a very good team. They don't have really necessarily a star. There's no Heck Creighton, candidates. There's not necessarily too many all Canadians. There's a bunch of very good players who know their responsibilities and play their role to the best of their abilities. And starting on offense, I think that starts with Noah Pelche stepping back in to play quarterback, to start a quarterback for them. was the starter a few years ago, suffered through some injuries. Owen Sieben came in, kind of took over the reins for a little bit, and then sustained an injury. And Noah Pelche really hasn't looked back. When Owen Sieben sustained the injury there early in the season, has been able to generate some buzz and excitement for that fan base, that program this season. Um, and they were quiet last week, which is um, maybe has my antennas up that they're going to break out this upcoming week. Them being that offense with Noah Peltier, who's been a very good con- um, distributor. That's the word I was looking for. Distributor, getting the ball out to many of their weapons as well. That they have, Sirleaf, Deshaun Mims, but another guy that like Arnaza, number 85, a young guy that's been, a valuable weapon to them. Marshall Erickson out of the backfield had himself a not bad game last week. Was the lone touchdown on the game. 16 carries, 86 yards, 5.4 yards per carry, and a touchdown. I think is just scratching the surface for them at tailback and can add an even more dynamic weapon for them in that position. Offensive line, a veteran group that is, played fairly well for them this season. And then on defense, guys have been stepping up all over the field. Look at that defensive line. A guy like number 95, I'm forgetting his name. Um, Tyrese Pollock, I believe. What is his name? Should have. I should know this, to be honest. But number 95, Cameron Mall in that defense, Jackson Salmack, Dylan Robinson's been in the lineup, but when he's in there, he's obviously one of the better corners in the country. Carson Salmack, who's been a contributor to them. What's the other guy? Cameron Mall. There's another guy in that Mr. Chopper Chopper Hippie, another guy in that defense who's been a contributor all year long. So I like Regina as a team. Like I said, I hope that they can understand that it is a joke when I take a little bit of a dig at them because I like their program. I like what they're building there, and I think they're going to be a strong team going into next year as well. That they're really building something there for longevity with Coach McConkey and Josh Donnelly on offense. That being said, I think it's going to add to the chaos of the Canada West this year that there's going to be 4 teams with 2 victories and UBC and Manitoba kind of in the forefront there. Everybody else with 2 victories is going to be a bloodbath in the final weeks to find out who's going to be the number 3 and 4 ranked or three or four best teams in the conference, and who will play UBC and Manitoba in the Canada West playoffs. So that does it, I think, for about this week, folks. About 45, 47 minutes or so, a little bit longer than our regular scheduled program. But as always, that kind of recaps things for week number 5 in the Canada West last week, with UBC getting a victory 32-30 over Calgary, Manitoba getting a win 22-13 over Regina, and Saskatchewan getting a thrilling home victory 33-30 over Alberta. This week's matchups in week number 6 of the Canada West Football Conference see UBC at 3-2 traveling to Alberta at 2-3. Manitoba 5-0, traveling to Saskatchewan 2-3, and the 1-4 Calgary Dinos traveling to Regina to take on the Rams. So, as I mentioned, that'll do it for this week's Canada West Football Show. One last reminder, as always, folks, to like, comment, subscribe. It would be greatly appreciated if you guys subscribed. We are at 1,000 Instagram followers. We're at 200 and something Twitter followers. Please push these subscribers on the YouTube channel. If we can get over 300 subscribers, that would be greatly, greatly, greatly appreciated by so many people, and most importantly, myself. So please subscribe when you guys do. Press the notification bell. You guys get notified every single time we go live, like the weekly show, post-game show for the BC Lions, or upload any sort of content like we have been the last few days with the YouTube Shorts, a Canada West football show like this one, as well as a preview show for the BC Lions like we do every week. TBD on this one because today, by the time you're watching this, it is my anniversary. So big time shout out number 1 and happy anniversary to my lovely girlfriend, Carly. Thank you so much for allowing me to do this, supporting me in this. I couldn't do this without you. And just thank you for allowing me to talk into a microphone in an empty room by myself. probably more than I would like to admit on a weekly basis and sacrifice the time away from you. I know tomorrow we will make it a point that it's just you and I, go out for some dinner, maybe a movie as well afterwards, and enjoy some you and I time. So big shout out to you. Love you, bubbies, and thank you as always. So that'll do it for another Canada West football show, guys. Week number 6. We will see you guys for week number 7 next Wednesday. Make it Thursday morning. See you guys next week.